Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette, and I am very excited. First of all, I'm broadcasting live from Cape May County, New Jersey via SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio and Television. Now, before I go any further, I want to, I need to address probably a couple of things to my friends on Facey, because those of you who are listening on SHR Media are going to be listening to this at the regular time, 5 p.m., which is the time that my show comes on, right? Hi, Ron Edwards. Hi, Deontay. Hi, everybody on Facebook. Hi, Tony and John Shad. Hi, Stan. Okay, so people on Facebook are probably like, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Why is she on? So it's campaign season and it's my busy season, which means my schedule is all like wackadoodle crazy. And I can't necessarily do my show live at 5 o'clock right now. So you'll just get like these surprise Facebook Lives. I'm pre-recording my show. So it's going to air. Somebody said they hate surprises. I have to see who that figures it was Deontay. Hi, Levon. So my Facebook Lives will probably be at whatever time I'm able to get my guests and record my show. But it'll always air at 5 o'clock every day on SHR Media. It's going to air. Hey, Thomas. Hey, Debbie. It'll air on SHR Media. You can rely on that. 5 o'clock every day. It'll be there. And I was like, should I deprive everyone of my Facebook? I'm kidding. No, but I wasn't going to do a Facebook Live. And then I thought, well, why not? So that's why I'm on at this weird time doing the Facebook Live, because my schedule is really completely out of whack. Oh, and I have some really cool guests coming up though, so I'm really excited about. I'm just glad I'm back on the air live and you guys don't have to suffer through any more re-airs. I'm sorry. I hope you guys enjoyed them though. Anyway, speaking of cool guests, I have a cool guest today and we're talking about a really great topic. Oh! Somebody just called me a pixie on Facey, which is very funny because I'm only 5'2", and I have someone else to thank for that. That's a reference to a Facebook chat. Someone refers to short people as pixies. Anyway, fun sized I prefer. But anyway, but I have Mark Hattas today, who is the co-founder and CEO of Journey's Dream, and we're going to talk today about the cost of mental illness, and I do mean that from a financial perspective. And we're going to talk about his organization, Journey's Dream, and we're going to talk about Soldiers of Hope. So it's a very important and timely topic, and I'm looking forward to speaking to him about that. We're going to have very soon a new Tax Mama commercial. It's not quite ready yet. Should be ready by tomorrow, I think. So I want to thank one of my sponsors, the Tax Mama, aka Eva Rosenberg, for sponsoring Money Talk with Melanie. If you haven't been to her website, make sure you go there. That's Tax Mama with 1 M. She answers your tax questions for free, and she also has 2 fantastic award-winning books, Small Business Taxes Made Easy and Deduct Everything. So you want to make sure that you definitely check both of those books out. FYI, another FYI for you, I am going to be back on Sirius XM on Wednesday. Hey Lori, hey Larry, I'm going to be back on Sirius XM on Wednesday. So I'll be back guest hosting Patriot Tonight on Sirius XM channel 125. So look out for me there. If you'd like to follow me on social media, do you guys know I don't even have 1,000 followers on Twitter? Really? What's up with that? I'm just saying. I have like 956. So follow me on Twitter, would you? At Money Talk Mel. If you follow me on Twitter, or like my Facebook page, which is at Money Talk with Melanie. All right. So let's talk some money talk news, shall we? When California, get this. What is wrong with California? Oh, speaking of California, wait a minute. Well, one more shameless plug, okay? Speaking of California, my latest article for the Horn News just posted, and you'll see it on my Facebook page. It's about California, how California just passed a law. Literally, you can get more jail time in California now for calling somebody by their, by not calling someone by their preferred pronoun. You can get more time for doing that than intentionally infecting someone with HIV in California now. You can get you can only get up to 6 months for knowingly infecting someone with HIV. You can get up to a year for knowingly and willingly calling somebody by their biological sex in California. So that's what the article's about on the Horn News. It's posted on my Facebook page. And yes, they are insane in California. They really need to put the weed down. Just saying. Something is seriously wrong with those folks out in Cali. Like, for real. I don't, something's wrong with them. So, anyway, so that's on thehornnews.com if you want to catch my most recent submission to them. So, and also crazy things that they're doing in California now. Employers can't ask, in order to close the wage gap, they're insane. In order to close the female wage gap, which I've talked about this before, which I don't believe really exists all that much, employers are not allowed to ask what your previous salary was. They can only ask for a range. Here's the deal, ladies. We have the babies. That takes us out of the workforce longer. That subtracts from the years of experience that we have. So, if you get paid for more years of experience, then the men are going to make more money. That's just the way it's designed. Kathy Barnett, thank you for joining us. A privilege to have you here. I'm honored. Thank you, Mark Keith Robinson, for being here. Thank you. So, at least that's how I feel about it. That's been my experience. I don't think employers are walking around going, she's a female, pay her less. I don't know. It's been my experience that employers go, okay, here's the base salary. You have 5 years experience, you get paid this. You have 10 years experience, you get paid that. And women, because we're the ones that have the babies, we take more time off. And, we're girls and we're physically more complex. We tend to have more time off. So we take more time out. So we spend more time on the bench. It's just how it is. So, I don't know. That's my theory on why we tend to get paid less, but I might be wrong. I may be wrong. Or as Al Ashford, as Al Ashford says, I might be wrong, but I don't think so. Anyway, you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette, and we will be back in a few moments.
Some Republicans just don't give a rip. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, I totally understand the leftist Democrats and their media helpmeets still being out of sorts over the election of President Donald Trump. Mrs. Clinton is still engaged in the blame game. Poor thing. But the poor knee-baby whine sniffle-hurt establishment Republicans who had visions of grandeur globalism dancing in their adult brains are also still freaked out over the election of the Donald. They never had the will or the desire to stand against former President Obama's mission to fundamentally change America into an illegal immigrant overrun cesspool. But yet, they bristle at the very idea of President Trump leading a movement to make America great again, or for once govern on behalf of our republic. According to an excerpt from talk show host Laura Ingram's new book, Billionaire at the Barricades, during a private meeting of senior Republican senators, GOP leaders laughed out loud at the idea of Trump's border wall would ever get built. We don't have the funds for such a project, they said. Yet the government spends $25 billion a year to maintain vacant, unused buildings. Come election time, voters will no longer have time to tolerate those swamp dwellers. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes. The tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with one M.com.
My name is David Barnett, and I've been helping people buy and sell small and medium-sized businesses since 2008. So far this year, I've gone on 5 vacations. It's because I've got my own business. When you get tired of being managed by someone else and you decide that business ownership is right for you without the risk of starting your own unproven enterprise, then come over to BusinessBuyerAdvantage.com. There are over 100 YouTube videos on buying and selling businesses that you can watch for free. That's BusinessBuyerAdvantage.com.
Okay, we are back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. My talk. I don't know if you can hear the fur diva jumping around the studio like a maniac, which, see, I get her trained for a certain time, and she usually takes a nap, but now she's jumping around because she doesn't know it's showtime, apparently. So I don't know if you can hear her jumping around like a nut trying to get my attention. But anyway, it's a good thing she's tiny. Anywho, welcome Claudia Cheek. Welcome. So good to see you. Okay, so we are back, and I am very excited to introduce my guest. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. Actually, before I do that, I have one more housekeeping item that I forgot to mention. The hurricane victims are still recovering, and if you find it in your heart to donate materially and you want the money to get to the victims, please do consider donating to 8 Days of Hope at 8daysofhope.com with the number 8 spelled out, EIGHT, Days of Hope spelled out.com. No administrative costs. The money will get to the victims. They're a non-denominational Christian organization, and the money will get to the victims. I want to make sure that I mention them and mention the good work that organization does. And I also want to make sure that I thank my other sponsor, David Barnett. You heard his commercial during the break at BusinessBuyerAdvantage.com. Make sure you go to his website and check it out. Check out all the free videos. Now, a bit about my guest, Mark Hattas, who's co-founder and CEO of Journey's Dream. Mark has, amongst other accomplishments, started and built and sold a nearly $20 million a year tech company. He was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder and told there was no cure. Mark didn't believe the prognosis, and through study, faith, practice, and support, Mark lived into his faith that he could be well. He is so thankful to God and all who helped. He is committed to help others and inspire hope and paths to success for them as well. This inspiration sparked a vision in 2012 for a world where all people are empowered and equipped to live healthy, joyful lives. The project, Journey's Dream, is the flagship project of a foundation Mark and his co-founders created with a mission to connect those touched by mental health challenges with programs and resources that support renewed hope and well-being. Mark is married with 5 children in Naperville, Illinois. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mark. Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, Melanie, so good to be here. Thank you.
I am thrilled to have you. And I wanted to, a mutual friend of ours, Keith Little, reached out to me about you and introduced us. And I'm so happy that he did, because many people, I'm sure people are going, why is she having this guy on the show? And she has a money show. I'm going to tell you why. Because everything is related to money, not the least of which is mental illness. So the first thing I want you to tell us about are the financial implications of having a mental illness. The financial implications personally and business-wise. What are they?
Well, that's a great question. And yes, thank you, Keith, for the introduction. And it's wonderful to be here. I would say that there are 4 or 5 different areas that affect money with mental health. With the particular diagnosis I had, and this is back in 2011, it was bipolar 1 disorder. And one of the things that I did is I spent a lot of money. I invested in things that weren't necessarily healthy investments. And I ended up letting my ego get involved, I suppose, and wanting this grandiose vision of wealth. And I ended up losing about $1 million. And it was not an easy time. So one of the things that can often happen is our decision making can be impaired when going through a health crisis, especially where I was in mania. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, and let's see, I'm going to let that first one sink in with the listeners just for a moment because it's a big challenge.
That is.
And if you have someone in your family or around you that's struggling with mania, it's something to be cautious of. But when I started to get well, the
actually,
other aspect was...
Mark,
Mark.
Not to cut you off, but explain to our listeners, when you're talking about bipolar disorder, what mania is.
So, all right, the best way of thinking of mania would be if you've ever had your computer running and had 10, 15, 20 things running, and your processing in the computer is doing its best to keep up, and your fan goes haywire, and then it kind of crashes. Mania is a little bit like that, except in the human body, where there's so much happening, and the brain is spinning instead of, let's say normally it would be operating at about 100%, it would be going at about 10 times that speed, or 100 times that speed. And there's all kinds of new information that may not have been accessible before, which is part of the allure of mania for some people as well. It's almost like this, a door opens and we see the mystery of the universe beyond the way we had understood it before.
Exactly.
However, at the other side of mania is often a crash, which is why they call it bipolar. There's that manic and depressive sides of it.
Exactly. Very good. I'm glad you explained that, and that's why. And so, why is it that this can be costly from a financial perspective?
So the second thing, once I lost a lot of money, and then I got to the healthy side, there's a transformation that begins to happen in terms of understanding what money is. And I always had judgments about money being something to covet, and something that would kind of put me in a position where I felt I could be valued. So if I had money, then I was worth something. And it was all dysfunctional thinking, but it was where I was at the time. So on the outside of losing all that money, I began to discover the truth about what money is. And it's just flow. It's like, whether it's money or electricity or the way water, rises out of a lake and then, gains weight and falls down as rain. It's just a flow. So I released my attachment to my value in money. And that was a huge opportunity for me to start to realize how to properly invest and use the funds that I did have. It was actually not lost on me that we all can go through a transformation with money. We've heard things and principles as we grew up. It's really important that human beings let go of those childhood ideas of what they thought money was, so that they can step more fully into a mature idea, a healthy idea, and then money can start to be used really constructively.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so your ability to think in a more mature way, is that clouded when you are suffering from some type of mental disorder?
It's for me it was. I wouldn't say that would necessarily be the case for all people, because we're all unique. But there is a tendency, specifically with bipolar and mania, that oftentimes people are pretty loose with money and spend on lavish things or make unusual risks that they wouldn't normally do if they were, in a healthy state.
Exactly.
Now, by the way, when I was in mania, if someone would have given me that argument, I might have said, "Oh, you've got to be where I am, because I see it better than you." And it's very challenging to communicate with someone in mania because there's a tendency to be in really an altered state.
Right. Because at the same time, you're kind of ultra positive, right? At the time.
I was. That was my experience of it. There was a specific deal. I didn't end up investing because I got caught before this investment happened. I say caught because mania can last for a while until people can pick up on it, until it gets to a place where it cycles so fast that, there's that, obviously behaviors that, aren't constructive.
Right.
And it was a project that was going to be quite a big investment, and I'm thankful I didn't do it, but I thought it was going to be the greatest thing ever, and I could have sold anybody in my mind on it. Not that they would have bought in, but I was convincing really myself because I wanted to take a risk and invest big and make big money, and it was kind of like, my world of time and space got a little bit too skewed. And thankfully that investment didn't happen, but some of the previous ones had already.
Indeed. Now, on the depressive side, in terms of, this is the thing that comes to my mind. On a depressive side, and this can, I would think, not only apply to people with bipolar depression, but people who have anxiety and depression or PTSD or anything along the lines of depression. I'm thinking that businesses lose money from people who miss work due to depression, people who are not as productive due to being in a depressive state. These are just ideas that come to mind. Does anything like that happen due to depression?
Yeah, so in the depressed state, it's essentially you have, in the workforce, you have someone who's doing the best that they can with where they're at, but an objective view would say that person's probably not as engaged. And there's many studies that have shown that there's about a 78 to 80% lack of engagement in the workforce. So it's not just because of depression, but depression certainly leads to people not really knowing why they're needed on the planet. Why am I here? What am I here to do? I remember coming home after my hospitalization in 2011, and I was on all these medications, and I wasn't feeling real good. And there's a movie called A Beautiful Mind that Russell Crowe was in, and I could relate to the scene that he was with his wife in the kitchen playing with one of the kids' toys, and he looked up at her, and this was after, he had gone through his, schizophrenia, mania, and he was on medication, and he said, "So what do people do?" Because it was so boring compared to the fantasy he was living. And I had one of those moments where it's like, oh my gosh, what do people do? Because life was so invigorating in my fantasy. And it's not a healthy place to be on the mania side at the workplace, although it can be incredibly productive for short periods of time. We see some of the greatest poets and the innovators, they have bipolar. And in that mania, they come up with these brilliant ideas, and I'll share notebooks of ideas that I came up with that I was writing through the whole period. And that's part of the allure of it. And one of the fears of actually healing bipolar is, well, will I still be able to get to that place where my mind is so innovative, where I'm able to tap into that source and experience, people would call it something, whatever they would call it, I'd say experiencing God in a way that's beyond the way I'd ever experienced it.
Now that's...
And the depression side is just awful.
Now that's... now I had never heard that before, that there are people who who are super productive and actually come up with really great ideas when they're on the manic side. That's...
They're not necessarily implementable when they're in mania, but there's it's mind expanding. And if you look through history at some of the greats, in fact, there's a movie that Paul Dalio did just recently called Touched with Fire. And if you want to see what bipolar is, he does a phenomenal job. He is a producer. And one of the things that you can see in there, they came up with this brilliant poetry, and he highlights in the movie, there's a book also, I think, by the same name or something similar, and there's this list of all these, Van Gogh and, poets and artists and filmmakers and all kinds of folks who have done incredible things. Not to say that they're saying it's Hemingway, they're not saying it's because of, but there's something that opens up, kind of a channel that opens within the person that's just mind expanding.
Interesting. Now that is very interesting. Now, do you have any idea? And I know I didn't ask you this pre-show, so if you don't worry about it. I know, and I actually should have looked this up, but I'm sure that the number is in the millions of what people spend on, I don't know, antidepressant drugs, antidepressant treatments, type of thing.
I don't have it broken down to that, but what I can share with you is that in 2010, globally, we spent $2.5 trillion, according to the World Health Organization, on mental and neurological health disorders. And they're projecting that by 2030, that number will be $6 trillion.
Exactly.
So it's insane how, pardon the pun there, but how extraordinarily incompetent we are at healing this. And that's attributable to the expansiveness of it. And it's one of the things that led me to Journey's Dream, to say, let's take the people who do have solutions, and even if it's not a full solution, but a partial treatment, something that's helping someone, and lift those up. There's a saying in the Bible that, don't put a bushel basket over your light, over the candle, take it up to the hillside. And that's kind of what we're doing with Journey's Dream, is finding these lights around the world and lifting them up so others can see, hey, there are pathways to health and well-being.
Exactly.
And perhaps we'll see that number change. Instead of growing to 6 trillion, maybe we'll see it reduce. That's what I'd like to see.
That's what I'd like to see. I mean, that number is staggering. It's staggering. And I knew the number. I figured the number had to be high. And to take it a step further, if that's the amount of money that we're spending, we can certainly connect that to public policy, the healthcare bill. If you think that that's not affecting your pocketbook, you want to know why I'm having Mark Hattas on Money Talk with Melanie, why we're talking about mental health, and why we're talking about his organization, which we're going to talk about in greater detail in a few minutes, and why his organization is needed. My primary reason is the mental health aspect and his organization. But certainly, there's a greater public policy and financial context here as well. It's all part of it, and it's all connected. And that honestly, that's what my show is all about, is for people to understand that all of these things are connected, and it's why you need to be concerned about it. This is why you need to pay attention. to these things. So and pay attention to what's in the healthcare bill and healthcare treatment, but primarily, and that's what we're going to talk about on the other side of the break. We're going to take a quick break in a minute. It is, the spiritual foundation. I think Mark is going to talk in detail about the 3 things that helped him, and then about his organization, and then about an event that they have coming up. But I think he's going to talk about 3 pillars that really helped him and that can help you too. One of the things that I asked him in kind of a pre-production meeting is I said to him, there are Christians out there that think that mental illness is a total spiritual problem. That if you have a mental problem, you have a spiritual problem. And I asked him, if that was something he'd be willing to talk about, and he said he was. So I was thrilled to hear that, because I think no one talks about that, and we should. So I was glad that he was willing to. So you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I hope I was able to connect the dots for everybody on that as to why I have Mark on the show. And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a few moments.
Power brokers use corrupt politicians, deceptive Islam, and lies from establishment media to turn the once shining city on a hill into the city of the blind. What do the elites fear? One man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me at SHR Media, High Plains Talk Radio, Spreaker, iTunes, and YouTube for a different kind of commentary on the unpleasant blind guy. Because truth is not always pleasant.
Hello, I'm Tim Hart. I'm the guy BZ hires due to his shameless contract with the SHR Media Network to voice his promos. He'd like me to tell you that the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be found on SHR Media Network, Spreaker, and YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American media maggots won't. You'll find that the speech is free, but the drinks are not. There, in the saloon, just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ is sending his personal drones of freedom into the wheelhouses and ossicles of lovers of sovereignty and liberty nationally and globally. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, BZ swears that no rights were harmed in the making of this promo.
From the war front to the streets of our nation's capital, men of faith, Dr. Michael Jones, the underground professor, and Kenneth McClinton, the exceptional conservative, bring both constitutional gravitas and spiritual perspective on today's issues to the most influential Christian urban talk show, 9:05 p.m. Eastern, Thursdays. It's a new day on New Day, Black and Red.
The best late night conservative talk show in America. Hattas Radio. And listen, there are no people better on the air to give you the best in conservative talk. Stackhead Sean and Stackhead Clint. And we're working on immigration papers for a certain other guy who happens to work here too. For those who are tuning in around the world to the best in late night conservative talk, Hattas Radio.
Radio. Radio.
The best late night conservative talk show in America. In America. In America.
And in this web was a large, I'm pretty sure it was the biggest spider I've ever seen.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your business diva, Melanie Collette. And I want to, actually, before I even say that, our guest today is Mark Hattas. He's the co-founder and CEO of Journey's Dream. And I want to give a few shout outs in the Facey chat and my late arrivals. And I want to thank you guys so much for being here. Joe Jackson, Maria, Dee Dee, Don, Dave Milner, the unpleasant blind guy, Robert, hello, Michael, Josh. You guys totally rock. Hal, I hope I didn't miss anybody. Thank you so very much for being here. So, for those of you who joined the chat and were like, what are you doing here? Who joined the chat, who got on late. So here's the thing. My schedule is totally like whacked out right now because it's campaign season. And I'm doing some consulting work and my schedule's kind of nutty because money. Because I'm the business diva. And I gotta, keep my diva style going. So my schedule's kind of wild right now. So what's going to happen is my show is still going to air at the regular time. And as you fellow hosts know, you can do the production anytime and air it when it airs. So I'm going to be doing a couple pre-records, but I might, I'll Facebook Live it like when I actually record it is what I think I'm going to do. That's the strategy that I came up with. But it will air on the radio. It will air at the regular time, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That will be the consistent time. But it can be on Facey, whenever. Whenever I can get my guest and I'm free and can record my show. So that's what I'm doing. That's the thing. Yeah, I'm just going to do the Facebook Live when me and my guests are available, and my show will always air on SHR Media at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's the strategy I've come up with. I hope it works. So that's what I'm doing. So anyway, I'm happy to have Mark Hattas here. So Mark, before the break, we talked about the money that's involved on the business side and personally. With mental illness. Let's talk a little bit about your organization, Journey's Dream, that you're the founder and co-founder and CEO of what it is that you guys do. Hey, Doug, what it is that you all do?
Well, essentially, we're bringing a hub together of resources so that anyone around the globe can find programs that exist today and those that will be coming in a place that they can trust. Because one of the biggest challenges that people have when they go through a mental health challenge is, who do you trust? We can do searches and things online and do Google searches, but there's so many varying opinions that are out there that sometimes one person can talk about, or organization can talk about something that sounds just brilliant and amazing, and the counter views collapse that. And when someone's really looking for support, having a place that they can trust is critical. The other thing we're going to do is we're building a global practitioner network of people who believe what we believe, which is that there are pathways to healthy, joyous lives for everybody. And right now, you can get a network of practitioners that are out there, but oftentimes it's just names on a page. And we like to have a more interactive directory so that you can really understand in your area, put a zip code in, and know, here's some practitioners that believe that I can get well. They believe in my recovery. They believe in my transformation, however it is that someone wants to view that.
Okay.
So those are just a few of the projects we're doing. And
more specifically, do they believe that there is a spiritual component? Because there are some practitioners who, let's be frank, are ungodly. There are some practitioners who believe that they are the way to healing and that God is not involved at all.
Well, one of the things we do in our environment is we're very inclusive of all the modalities and the different types of thinking. But we cover the body, the mind, the spirit, and the emotions. So someone could come and find views that are very strongly based and rooted in Christianity or Judaism, Islam, and the Buddhism. The things that are out there in the world that actually support people in getting healthy and well. And so when someone's ready or they're seeking that spiritual component, they'll be able to find it. So we want to bring all these together, including those who may not believe in that relevant aspect at this maybe they will at some point.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Maybe not now, but hopefully. But hopefully, eventually. And before the show, when we did the kind of the pre-production conversation, you spoke about three things that really contributed to your well-being. And what were they?
So the first is community. It's really connecting with a community that is surrounding us with love. If someone's struggling and they're around people who are projecting their views on what a mental health challenge is that aren't constructive and aren't from love, it's extremely unhealthy and can lead to even further challenges. So to surround yourself with a community of love, and if you have someone that's with you that's challenged, to be that source of love, to be that friend, that mother, that father, that sister or brother, whatever that is, and support their full health and well-being. That's a big deal. The second thing, and community can be found in a lot of places, not just online these days, but it can be found at the coffee shops, and we'll find it if we're looking for it. So seek it. The second thing that I attribute it to is there's a doctor who I started with, and he did not believe that I could be well. And he, in fact, told me I'd be on medicine the rest of my life. And it took me about 3 years to finally say, look, I've got to fire you.
I love it.
I liked him. He's a great man. But he just didn't believe what I believed. And so I then found practitioners that believed it. So the second thing are the doctors and practitioners who were really right there, and they believed that I could get well, and they had practices and therapies and things that were extremely supportive. And then the third thing is the spiritual nature of what's going on. And I would say that for me, I grew up a Catholic, and I found answers in some teachings that were in the Christian background with the Beatitudes and true forgiveness. And it's extraordinary how amazing these practices are. And I actually say that without that, I'd probably still be going in cycles and spinning around in the mania. But with that, what it allowed me to do is to soften my belief systems of who I was and what was the issue, and to allow for a change to happen. And that allowed for these emotions that I had stored to surface and release, and allowed for a deepening and a healing to happen in my spirit. And it was that brought forth the courage to do what it was needing for me to do to actually get well.
And that's, I guess that's kind of the thing, is that some people knock the doctors completely, but as you and I talked about before the show, sometimes you need the doctors to get you to the point where you're receptive to get to the spiritual part. Sometimes you're so far away from reason, I guess is what I'm trying to say, that you can't, you're not even in a position to listen or hear anyone,
Correct.
Including your pastor. You know what I mean? You don't even want to hear from your pastor because you're so far outer limits. So,
right. Yes.
Go ahead.
And that really helps to be, one of the things the medicine really helped me do is to get to a balanced state. Medicine's never going to cure anybody.
Right.
The healing happens, though, while we're stable. Unless we lived out in caves and could go be crazy out in the mountains and no one's affected,
right.
That's a different approach, I suppose. But we live in a society that, there's not a lot of tolerance for people acting different. And when they do act different, there's usually a number of people who are going to start to question that person very, very quickly. And they're probably going to end up in a hospital very, very quickly. And so thank God we're not doing what we did 50 years ago, which is lock people up and shock them and put straitjackets on them and give them, frontal lobe lobotomies and all kinds of things. So we've advanced tremendously, but the medicine now allows for a little bit of stability for a short time so that this experience that I had experienced of that spiritual healing has an opportunity to come forward. that therapies that are being used, that those have an opportunity to come forward. And it's extremely helpful wherever someone's at. Someone might not want to go down the spiritual path at all. Some people only want to go down the spiritual path.
Right.
And so it's really important to meet people where they are and give them that support, which is why with Journey's Dream, we cover all of it. It's create an environment where all these modalities can come together, because the people who are struggling deep down within them, they're going to know, something's going to resonate with them as to what's best for them at that moment. And that one thing that's best for them at that moment, we want to have available for them.
Indeed. Indeed. I always wonder, like, especially, with some of the crises that we have had here recently that have been in the news headlines and things like that. I wondered aloud and sometimes on social media, like, what do you do if you are not a Christian? What do you do if you are not a believer? How do you not get depressed? How do you stay heartened under these circumstances if you're not a believer? I don't know how you would. Like, what in the world you would chalk it up to? I don't, I can't fathom it.
It's not, you're stretching outside of the area of my
right.
experience, because that wasn't where I was, but that would be another guest to talk deeper about what they might do, because I'm with you. I believe that there is an opportunity to help the brain get the nutrients it needs, the gut needs to heal, and the patterns and behaviors in a person's life, there's an opportunity to really soften those and have those change. So that could be done through the practices that I learned.
Certainly.
Even though the practices I learned for many years were coming to bear to support me.
Now,
they are really everyday practices that anyone by any religion could practice.
Indeed. Now, are there some warning signs or any recommendations that you would give a Christian who's looking for a good practitioner? Because like I said, I know that there are some practitioners who would say, "Oh, well, your problem is your Christianity. Your problem." Yeah, I mean, there are some practitioners who are like that. Who would tell you, your problem is your adherence to God's law. Maybe if you had a man and you weren't trying to, you weren't trying to stay single, you wouldn't be depressed. You know what I mean?
Well, if someone, and I've shared this with a couple people, there are great practitioners out there, great ones, but you need to want to find them, and you've got to have the courage to fire the ones that aren't helping you. So if someone's giving you advice that's really inconsistent with your belief system,
exactly,
find some other practitioners out that, at some point you'll be able to come to our site. We don't have it built yet. We're still building the practitioner network I was talking about. We're looking to raise some funds to do that. But they're in your area, and the first thing to do is admit that the help you're getting may not be the best for you, and open the opportunity with you and the people around you to start finding someone who's going to be ideal.
Yeah, that was my...
It could be a non-traditional source. I mean, it could be, not a traditional psychotherapist or something. It could be that it's the pastor. It could be that it's an MD. It could be that it's a massage therapist. Everyone's going to have a different thing that's going to allow for them to really reconnect. But at the core, I think you nailed it. We have an opportunity to really connect with the core of our being. And the core of our being, it's always love.
True.
And if anything unlike love is coming up, then we're off. And
Indeed.
So the number one thing for anyone to do is reconnect with that relationship, with love, with God, with whoever, whatever it is that represents love in that person's life, to reconnect. And that's really critical. And when we see some of the things that happen in Vegas and that kind of thing, and we see what horrible acts have taken place on this planet from people who didn't know how to ask for help.
Right.
And they were hurting. And then instead of dealing with the hurt inside, they projected that hurt and killed many people. That pain, that confusion, and reconnecting with that love is going to help always. I call it the Holy Spirit, that spirit of life within us, the spirit of God within us that guides us and unwinds all of our errors until we're whole. We know who we are, we know our purpose. And when someone's truly alive in that, there's never a thought anymore to harm another person or themselves.
Indeed.
And that's when you know you're well. When you're thinking, your purpose, everything is really in harmony with it, with others around us.
Indeed. Now, those are the two important takeaways that I appreciated about what you were saying and about your organization and about your event coming up. One, no such thing as not being able to get well. That's number one. As long as the Almighty is around and as long as Jesus is reigning, there's no such thing. There just isn't.
Amen.
And secondly, and so don't let any doctors tell you that's the case. And the second thing is that if any doctor tells you anything that is counter to your religious beliefs, then you fire him ASAP and find somebody else, because that's not the doctor. That's the enemy, and that's just not the person for you. That's the other thing. So I want to make sure that anybody who is listening and struggling in that regard makes sure that they take away those two very clear points. So tell us about your organization has an event coming up. So tell us about that and how anybody who may want to get involved can get involved.
Awesome. And just a refinement on what I was hearing you say there.
Please.
If someone is going to fire their doctor,
get another one first.
Keep in mind, you need to have kind of a place to go. There
Right.
needs to be an outlet that is going to be there to support you. So be really clear and conscious about that choice. It's not a willy-nilly kind of, oh, yeah, I'm going to fire my doctor, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Like, no.
Sure.
This is a very clear, prayerful choice that's going to support your health and well-being and your best actions with all those around you as well.
Certainly.
But thank you for the event. Oh my gosh, I was in awe when our event coordinator, he was inspired, and he does a lot of inspired writing, and we were talking about where this was going to be, and he said, Mark, Soldier Field. And I said, what are you talking about? We're going to do an event at Soldier Field? And he's like, yeah, Soldier Field, and we're going to create this community of hope, and we'll call it Soldiers of Hope. So we're gathering on November 4th at the Midway Room at Soldier Field. It's a pretty new room, and it's gorgeous. And actually, when you go down the stairs, you can actually go out the glass doors, and you're right at the field and see the Jumbotron and all the seats and the stadium and all that. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
And we're going to gather with a few cool celebrities. Elvis Presley has a stepbrother who actually found Elvis dead. He used to travel with Elvis on tour. And he has a new book about the opioid epidemic, and he's going to be sharing some cool stories of what it was like to grow up with Elvis and what he's doing with the opioid epidemic. And Frank Shankowitz, the Make-A-Wish Foundation, one of the co-founders there, one of the founders, he built one of the most successful not-for-profits around. They do, I think it's a few $100 million a year. They do thousands of wishes a year, whatever the numbers are. They're in something like 68 countries. And to hear a founder of an organization talk about what it took to really build something, and that's what we're doing. We're building something here that's long-lasting and global. So I'm thrilled to have Frank Shankowitz there. And then we have a panel with, right now we've got 7 practitioners. And these are amazing people who all believe in health and well-being. One of them, with the PTSD crisis in the military, obviously with Soldier Field and Soldiers of Hope, we're going to have a military presence there and do a color guard. And with PTSD, there's a doctor coming who has a strategy that within 45 minutes reverses the individual to their pre-PTSD state.
Wow.
It's incredible. Now, while they're in that pre-PTSD state for a few months or years, whatever the duration is, they still need to learn these core tools. but it's kind of like what we talked about, softening the situation and then giving them some tools to support their optimal health and well-being with the whole person, the spirit too. And there's others too. So we've got these practitioners who are brilliant. There's an anesthesiologist, an MD, psychologist, lots of really great folks, led by Dr. Marissa Pei, who will be our moderator for that. And we're going to have a video on the big Jumbotron, and we're going to have food, and it's going to be a celebration of hope for people. And we're inviting practitioners, we're inviting people who are struggling, those who care about those people who are struggling. And any of your listeners, if they put in our sign-up at journeystream.org, if they put Hope 1, no space, just Hope and the number 1, in the promo code, they can come for a donation of their choosing.
Oh, nice.
So the ticket prices that are $250 a person, instead of paying that, they can pay whatever they feel inspired to pay. And those that have more will pay more, as they're inspired, and those who want to be there but may not have the funds, they can come as well. We want to build this community right here in Chicago. And this will probably be an annual event. So we're pretty pumped about it.
Very nice. Very nice. Excellent. Well, Mark, I have to say it's totally been a pleasure, and I can tell the baby in the background is excited as well about your upcoming event.
That's my cat.
Is that your cat? That's the cat? Oh, my gosh.
That's the cat. He came in the room and he started meowing. It's like, don't you know I'm on the radio?
It's just offering praise to the Father. That's all.
Yes.
I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. Just excellent information, and I just think it's something that's rarely talked about, probably especially on a business show. is my guess. So I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And I certainly hope you'll come back, and I'm wishing you much success for your event and for your organization.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Absolutely. You have a great day. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I am your business diva, Melanie Collette. We'll be back in a couple of moments.
Who likes paying taxes? Nobody. That's why Eva Rosenberg from TaxMama.com wants you to pay less of them. Read Small Business Taxes Made Easy and learn how to set up a business plan that minimizes taxes, the tax benefits of different forms of financing, spot and fix errors in the 1099s, legally increase your deductible expenses with better record-keeping techniques. Don't let the IRS squeeze you out of every penny. Start deducting today. Visit TaxMama.com. TaxMama.com. That's TaxMama with 1M.com.
My name is David Barnett, and I've been helping people buy and sell small and medium-sized businesses since 2008. So far this year, I've gone on 5 vacations. It's because I've got my own business. When you get tired of being managed by someone else and you decide that business ownership is right for you without the risk of starting your own unproven enterprise, then come over to BusinessBuyerAdvantage.com. There are over 100 YouTube videos on buying and selling businesses that you can watch for free. That's BusinessBuyerAdvantage.com.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for listening today. I want to thank my guest, Mark Hattas, who is just fantastic, co-founder and CEO of Journey's Dream. Remember, if you can get out to his event in Chicago, it's fantastic. He was just really full of some just great information. Do listen to the podcast again and pick up on all of the details. Just really a fantastic guest. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that Keith Little, who just joined the Facebook chat, connected us. Nice job, Mr. Keith Little. Very good job on that. He did an excellent job. And I better close out the show so that I don't go over when it airs live. Remember, if you guys are listening on Facey and you missed any of the show actually will air on SHR Media at the regular time at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will see you folks later. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.